Big props to Unlearning Economics for tuning me into this one. You know, it's been a while since we've had to really wrangle with this particular style of argument. Normally, I wouldn't pay much attention to this, but I really don't like Thought Slime, so I'll take an excuse to provide a learning opportunity for everyone else. Here, everyone listen up, okay?
I'm sure some economist who should log off would point out that, like, okay.
Oh, this is one of those styles of videos, by the way, where a person will, in a cowardly fashion, use humor as a way of making an argument that's hyperbolic, but the hyperbole is kind of ambiguous, so you're not meant to know exactly how seriously they're taking the argument they make. But Thought Slime is taking this argument fully seriously, so don't be deluded into the position that this is like, you know, like, oh yeah, well, they're not fully serious. They are, you know. I've seen this before. Everyone across the political aisle does this kind of argument. Except for me. Of course.
Sure, but Nintendo only makes Nintendos because they can sell them at big retailers like Walmart. Walmart's got to have that stuff because that's how the market distributes goods to people. If we stopped paying for goods, what would incentivize Nintendo to make Nintendos? Who would manufacture and distribute Nintendos? Also, less importantly, all other goods.
Soy. So yeah, this is the classic, like, under socialism, how will we have people do jobs when they don't want to do jobs without making them pay rent argument. So, you know, it's a valid line to go down. This is one of the, like, big questions in economics, right? How do you get people to do work they don't want to do? You know, historically the solution to this has been give them money if they do the work, and if they don't have money they can't live. That's kind of like the historical template you're working off of. Socialists claim to have a better answer. Thought Slime claims to be a socialist. Let's see what the better answer is.
And, like, I don't want to overstate my case here, but here's why all of economics is fake. It's a fake idea for rubes and fools, and there are literally no worthwhile ideas to be understood from the entire field of economics. Every economist you've ever heard of is a fraud.
Karl Marx was an economist. Yeah, this is what I mean by, like, yeah, like the Schrodinger's hyperbole thing. I really hate it when lefties fall on this sword, you know? Because a lot of lefties seem to operate on the understanding that literally all of economics is like a bunch of neoliberals explaining why poor people don't deserve good things, when it's not. You're kind of conceding the argument to the right when you do that, because you're essentially arguing that this critical, foundational, like, pillar of modern society and the analysis thereof is entirely siding with neoliberal economics, when it's not. There are tons of economists who, you know, provide critical analysis and give us answers to questions that we need answers to in ways that are favorable to a socialist argument, you know? But when you do this, it's like, yeah, well, actually, this entire critical field upon which everything in modern society is built is, well, just ignore it. And it's like, well, no, you can't really do that.
We would still make Nintendos because we like to have Nintendos. They're nice. Nintendo actually stopped making Nintendos like decades ago, and people still make them all the fucking time. People build enormous, expensive infrastructure to preserve and maintain abandoned software for Nintendos at great personal risk. They do it better than Nintendo does, despite Nintendo making millions of dollars from getting to do it. You literally could not stop people from making Nintendos if you tried. I know this because Nintendo has tried. And that is true of literally every single consumer good you can think of.
So basically, their argument off the bat is people make custom ROMs and edits of Nintendo games, so obviously people will just clean the sewers when they want to, Lamau.
It is someone's passion to make, to the extent that they would give up everything in their life for the chance to do it for a living, and they would find a way to do it better and more efficiently than any business could ever hope to.
Like, I genuinely think if this is your take on economics, you should just delete your YouTube channel. This isn't even like me attacking lefties or anarchists, whatever, because this isn't what anarchist or leftist theory says. This is just anti-intellectualism. It is literally like all of jobs and business and economy are all fake. And actually, if you just got rid of all that, it turns out that everyone is a diehard hobbyist for every kind of work that needs to be done. laying like, like brutal construction work being done in the desert at 97-degree heat. Yeah, there are people that's like their life passion actually. Like testing water all across rivers across the heartland of the United States to make sure that like the pH acidity level is perfectly in line with the estimates of the yeah, no. Modern industrial society requires coordinated, regulated, and bureaucratic work from millions of people that all needs to be perfectly in lockstep in order for anything to remotely function. The obnoxious thing is the closest thing that you would get to a realization of this kind of attitude is some kind of dystopian anarcho-capitalist, like, regulation-free, like, cyberpunk society. No, well, not even cyberpunk, because the kind of technology you would need to manufacture, like, computer chips is beyond any kind of production scale you could get out of coordinated hobbyists. You need factories for that. So it would be more like, if you could imagine all of the incoherence of like a cyberpunk setting, but it's anarcho-primitivist, so it's actually like, imagine people dying because of regulation problems at your local hand-dug well, you know, because turns out the guy whose passion it was to dig wells didn't actually have like a hydrological degree or like a virology degree, so he wasn't capable of determining whether or not the water was safe to drink. Yeah, like that's the world we're in for here. This video actually gets worse, by the way. If you can believe it, it actually gets stupider, okay? Hold on.
Also, hundreds of other people would find doing it pretty interesting and fun if they were allowed to do so on their own terms. People, literally, for fun, play video games about long-haul trucking, and you're seriously trying to make the argument that without the profit incentive, nobody would want to do a boring job, like trucking, or cleaning public infrastructure, or farming.
Guys, Power Wash Simulator is doing really well. So actually, guys, I've got good news, okay? Power Wash Simulator is doing well. Therefore, okay, so here's a question. Why then are people playing Power Wash Simulator instead of cleaning their damn house? Maybe there's something about Power Wash Simulator, like the fact that it's a game and you're not actually suiting up in like biologically insulated clothing in order to delve into the city's sewer system, to use a pressure washer to hot blast fossilized turds off the inner wall of your like lead pipes, because the guy whose hobby it is to lay pipes really likes lead because it's heavy, so it settles well in the like. It's yeah. This argument is nanners. I rate it a solid 9.8 out of 10 nanners. This bunch of nanners is full. Okay, this is a full bunch. People that, yeah, can you imagine somebody this is actually like the lefty equivalent of somebody going like, yeah, you really want to take me on? I have over 900 hours in CSGO, all right? You seriously think you could defeat me in combat? Bro, I would flashbang your ass across the apartment complex and dive in on you before you even knew. Bro, you have no idea how quick my quick shots are. Like, oh yeah, dude, haven't you, what do you mean? The modern generation is unfit for war? Have you not seen the popularity of Battlefield 4? Come on, get real. Truly incredible stuff. I feel I don't even want to like respond rationally to this argument because it's so dumb that you know what I mean? It would be like pulling out a textbook to respond to a 4-year-old asking why every time like they ask how pipes or electric wires work. Like there's only so much you're going to get from this, Here, finish the damn clip and I'll give you the real lefty answer to these questions.
Or farming. Hey economists, what are you talking about? Why are you like this? Why do I have to keep explaining to you, economists, that accomplishing things feels good?
This is the Schrodinger's hyperbole thing again. I think we should send we should find Mildred's Steam playlist, and we should find the most grueling work that they have enjoyed gamifying, and we should send them to do that. You know what I mean? Like if they if they have a bunch of hours in Farm Simulator or something, it's like, all right, buddy, have I got the job for you? Okay? You're now going to spend every day of your life in sweltering heat, doing back-breaking labor, tossing a bunch of tomatoes into a bin. Send all the Minecraft kids to the mines. Yeah, true. The children yearn for the mines. This kind of is that argument, isn't it? It's like, you know, you don't, people want to do lots of really hard work, don't they? Like, yeah, all of modern industrial society, which represents the apex of human efficiency and productive, ingenuity, people want to do that. Why are we keeping them from doing that? Why is Big Brother, the deep state, keeping me from sending my 6-year-old to go fight fires? He loves fire trucks. Why is he not driving the fire? Why do we need to pay firefighters? My 6-year-old boy will do this for free. Okay? In 1984. True.
Get the fuck out of here, economists, for real. What the fuck, you guys? But somehow, the Walmarts of the world have convinced us that if they weren't there to own everything before we owned it, why would anyone make anything?
God, that's incredible. Oh my God. It's actually so stupid that if you were a neoliberal, you would be closer to Marx's perspective on economics than they are. You could be, I don't know, Kissinger, and you would actually be if Marx was here and he could talk to Mildred, he would disagree with more in that conversation than if he was talking to Kissinger. Why is he blaming economists solely for the organization of modern industry? A lot of lefties unironically do the thing with economics that righties do with like Jews or Hollywood, where they think that a bunch of academic technocrats somehow have control over the global everything. Whereas in reality, by the way, a lot of economists get, the same kind of dead-end social work or like, NGO jobs that you would expect sociology majors to get. And every once in a while, a couple of them are elevated to prominence, and maybe a person in power might sometimes listen to them, Like, arguing that economists control the economy is like arguing that Robin DiAngelo controls society. It's really dumb. Wasn't Karl Marx an economist? Yes, as a matter of fact, he was. You might note, by the way, that he didn't actually control all of the, all human economy at the time he was alive either. Unfortunately, if only, right? If only. The fundamental question here that's being asked and very, very ineptly answered is like, well, how do you get people to do work they don't want to do? Now, don't mistake, okay? What you have to understand is nobody is going to want to live under socialism if it comes packaged along with a centuries backwards regression in industrial efficiency, okay? People like having medications being sort of like mass produced and readily available. People like having things, People don't want to go back to living in log huts. We can't decrease the general standard of productive efficiency. Now, there is waste, by the way. I don't know if under socialism we need like 50 different kinds of O-shaped cereal. Yeah, I don't know if we need like 50 different factories making 50 different kinds of O-shaped. There are probably places where you could cut down on the edges a little bit, but for the most part, you have to maintain a pretty high level of efficiency. Vaush, are you anti-degrowth? I am. I am all for cutting down on inefficiencies, but I don't think the average person can or should be expected to reduce the general quality of life that they live. Maybe like in a regulatory sense, there's some stuff that cuts down on like fast fashion, and maybe like we stop subsidizing the oil industry so gasoline is artificially cheap, and maybe driving around is a bit more expensive, stuff like that. But broadly, I think people should be able to live in a world where they can just kind of get dumb shit. I think that's a privilege of modern life. And in order to maintain that level of industrial efficiency, people are going to have to do work that they don't like doing. It's not possible for every kind of job there is. And there are basically an uncountable number of kinds of different jobs, with now in a modern economy, like work so specific that no one could ever develop a hobby for it. Like there's no way to be a hobby for a lot of the kinds of jobs that exist, It's too specific, it's too niche, it requires too much technical know-how. It's so like it doesn't work that way. That's like a child's way of understanding the world, you know? Like, well, what if we just had a person whose dream it was to list out every single job that it's possible to have? No, no. So how do you get people to do work that they don't want to do? Well, you know, you go back like really far in time, right? Like back to the tribal days when humans were hunter-gatherers. What happens if you are a human in a hunter-gatherer society and there's work you need to do and you don't want to do it? I think people probably didn't like that. There's probably a range of responses from they would kill you to they would leave you to die to they would tolerate you begrudgingly, but there would be an overwhelming amount of social pressure for you to not be a lazy asshole. You know, it's hard to say, probably varied tribe by tribe, but there was a pressure. People needed to do the work because the tribe couldn't survive if nobody did work, obviously. And work is work. It's hard work. You know, it's not like hunter gathering is easy. Neither was agriculture when that came about, you know. And as we developed more sophisticated economic systems, like, say, for example, standard currencies, it became possible to sort of quantify the worthwhileness of work. And that quantification, by the way, has always been an arbitrary process. Again, like, it's not like CEOs work 500 times as hard as every worker underneath them, obviously. So it's more of a abstract social quantification, you know, a designation that doesn't necessarily reflect how much good you're actually doing. Another good example is child rearing and housework. These two things, especially child rearing, necessary, as it turns out, for human civilization. Find me a human civilization that can survive if nobody's taking care of children. You can't. You can't do it. It's pretty necessary. It's like the most necessary, even. It literally is the single most. Do we pay for it? No. No, we don't. Not unless you're hiring an outside firm. Most of the time we don't pay because we expect women to do it just by default, you know? Things are changing a bit on that front. You know, now we're getting men in on the unpaid labor on that front as well. But, you know, like I said, it's a little bit arbitrary. So you acknowledge that. It's like, okay, well, then how do we get people to do difficult work that they don't necessarily want to do? Well, when it comes to child rearing, a lot of it is kind of like a biological thing. People want to take care of their kids. So it's sort of set a little there. Also, social pressure. The state imposes a ton of social pressure on people to take care of their kids, don't they? Because you can go to jail if you don't. That's an incentive. Jailing people if they don't do a thing. Like 1,500 years ago, you could have a kid and then just leave. It was a shitty thing to do, but you could just do that. But for a long time, and in many civilizations, there's been an effort to use the power of the state to enforce the role of parentage. And this is an enforcement that I generally agree with, by the way. Like, I don't think you should be able to just spawn a bunch of kids, then run off and leave them to sort of live welfare life. You know, like, I think that's a bit crap. I think you should do a little better than that. So that's one way to incentivize work that you don't, that, you know, people don't necessarily want to do. You can just arrest or kill them if they don't do it. You know, that's definitely an option. You can socially pressure people into it. That's also a huge part of like the parentage stuff. You know, if you're a bad parent or you don't do your parenting work, you know, there's like a lot of social stigma that comes along with that. But from an economics perspective, normally the way you get people to do work they don't want to do is through currency, right? Right. So if there are two ways to incentivize something, you can either punish them if they don't do it or give them something nice if they do it, right? So you're not arrested if you don't have a job, at least not today, not in the United States, you know, as far as I'm aware. But you get money if you go to a job and you need money to live. So there's kind of like a pressure threshold, you know? And the argument always is, if you got rid of currency, if you got rid of like the need to work to survive, then people wouldn't do difficult jobs. Now, thankfully, we know for a fact that's BS. There have been studies done on the effects of welfare on people's willingness to work. I forget the country right now. It was one of those Nordic countries where everyone's pale and, I don't know, weird. But, you know, it was found that a pretty hefty base living standard, you know, like No matter what you're doing or why, you get a flat amount of money. I think it was Sweden. I think it was Sweden. It turns out, you know, you can give people that baseline and they'll still go to work, you know? Like, even if you tell a person, hey, you can not work for the rest of your life and still live a relatively comfortable existence, not super lavish, but you can get by. You don't have to work. People will still work. That's pretty cool, right? I mean, that indicates something about humans. I think, in my mind, what it indicates Marx was right, as he always has been, about what drives humans fundamentally. He called this the species being, the way in which an animal, any animal, sort of relates to its environment, the fundamental drive. And for Marx, he posited that humans, species being, had to do with creative construction, engagement with our environment, a willingness to change our surroundings, to build them out, to mold them to suit our needs and purposes. And hey, it's true. Humans love doing that. We do that everywhere all the time. We are naturally expansionist in ways that other animals aren't. Bears are cool. I think they're really cool. I think they're cute. They're like I was about to say they're like teddy bears. They are like teddy bears. They're like big dogs, but like dangerous. I think they're cool. But bears don't go building bear cities. They probably could if they had some kind of underlying instinctual drive to do it. They could like gather some dirt and wood and kind of make little walls. I don't know. But they don't. They're fine. They're okay. We love building walls. It's like you take a bunch of boys, you take the boys down to the beach, they start digging a hole. Boys love digging holes. That's a human thing, I guess dogs like digging holes too. So, whatever. You can take from that whatever you want. Yeah, beavers like building dams. Birds like building nests. But our dams are larger and our houses are cooler. We're just better at those things. Marx posited that humans have an innate biological kind of like expansionist desire to mold their environment, conform it to their needs. I agree with him on this. And the fact that humans will still work, even if there's like a UBI, even if there's a guarantee they'll get to live their life comfortably without working, I think that speaks to that. So how do we apply this to socialism? Okay? How do we do this? So is the argument then, you don't need currency, you don't need anything, even if everyone is taken care of by default, they'll still go out and do all the work? No shot. You're a psycho if you think that. Absolutely not. Okay, the world is full of and maintained by really difficult jobs that are often physically taxing. They require a lot of work and investment. They're often tedious. Automation fixes this to a point, but there's always going to be work people don't want to do. And in my mind, what I've always thought of this as, okay, people think of it as like, okay, well, what happens if you abolish currency? Can you get all this done without currency, without coercion? Well, here's the thing, guys. I don't think you can get anything done without coercion. Coercion is an omnipresent force that drives action. You could argue even our species being is a product of a kind of innate biological coercion, us adhering to the designs of our, of our literal design, that we're always responding to some kind of pressure. Some kinds of pressure are more damaging than others, certainly. I don't think that two kinds of coercion, one like light social pressure and one like the state pointing a gun at you, these are the same. No, of course not. But there is always coercion. And the question for me is, how do you reduce the coercion? How do you make it as harmless and as little disruptiveness as possible? Like, how do you tune that down? And for me, that is a gradual process. That's not like a big revolutionary, you turn a dial, you change the mode of social production, and kablamo, it's gone. No. In fact, after, if you could imagine some like idyllic socialist revolution, after the revolution was done, that would be the time people were doing the most work. You guys realize post-revolutionary periods are usually fraught with like strife and famine and difficulty and reconstruction and like that wouldn't be the time like instantly it's like, well, now everyone gets to be leisure. No, obviously not. That would be the time people are working twice as hard as any other. So the idea you can just flip the switch, no, I don't believe this. It's a gradual process where you try to understand the forces that contribute to coercion, and you pull back at them and see what is necessary and what isn't. Well, here's an answer for you, okay? Thanks to that study from Sweden or whatever, we know for a fact that the cruel and unnecessary standards that we put poor people in this country, the United States, is it Finland, not Sweden? Finland, okay. Thanks to that study, we know the way we treat poor people here in the United States is unjustifiable. We don't have to listen to people argue, oh, well, they have to be this poor, welfare has to be this thin or whatever, because otherwise they wouldn't work, because we know it's wrong. We know for a fact that there is an element of economic coercion here, something which is present but wholly unjustified by our understanding of how humans act under certain circumstances. And I think that if we're creative and if we're diligent, we can keep that process going. Okay, now we know you can have this baseline existence. Now, what happens if everybody, in addition to the UBI, also gets vouchers they can use to buy food, no matter what? It's not a means tested thing, food stamps, but better, let's say put it down $400 credit to every household per month, and they can just go to the grocery store, use that, Does that in any way reduce people's effectiveness? Does it pull too much from the economy? What kinds of subsidies allow us to provide a better baseline existence for everyone without taxing the people who are doing the work necessary to provide those subsidies? You keep at that process and you make things better and better and better and better. Look at what happened recently with that test that was done in the United Kingdom with the 4-day work weeks, where it turned out, that everybody liked the 4-day work weeks. The workers were more productive. Everyone liked them, and now they don't want to go back to 5-day work weeks. Well, great. We've done an experiment. Higher productivity and higher happiness. And they work one less day. Well, there we go. This is what I mean. It's a gradual process. So I reject attitudes like this. I think they're anti-intellectual. I think they're reductive would be like charitable, like reduction is what you do to a soup when you keep it on a simmer for 10 minutes. Okay. This is like the burnt crust at the bottom after you leave it on overnight. Like this isn't even reductive. This is burnt. Okay. I do not. No, but that's always my answer. It's the same as everything. What's the perfect democracy? Well, nobody has an answer to that, really. What we do know, though, is that there are changes you can make to existing systems, and you can tweak these changes, and you can see, does this improve or worsen things? And as long as you keep that attitude going, you keep it an experiment, you keep moving forward, you can eventually build out an understanding of what the hypothetical limits of a good society are. Nothing will ever be perfect, but you can make things better. And that attitude, this proletarian desire to mold society to suit our needs, that's not only an expression of our species being, it's a distinctly socialist variant of it, because we're doing this in a way that is catered to the benefit of the proletariat, not just to the people in charge. And that's the goal, Vaush, what you're talking about is like applied economics. What about more theoretical stuff like labor theory of value? Yeah, my honest to God answer to that is I just don't care. I know we had a big talk on this, but like the problem that I have is that like at the end of the day, in a practical sense, my interest in economics, something which I don't have a formal background in, begins and ends at the extent to which I can make arguments for a world that is better than the one we currently live in. And never have I felt the need to bust out the labor theory of value in the service of that pursuit. Not to say there's no value to it broadly, but like I'm never going to be having a conversation with somebody about like decommodifying healthcare or whatever, and like that comes up in a normally it's just a misunderstand, like people misunderstand the labor theory of value to scapegoat attacks against me, but I don't want to play that game. I don't want to get on that battlefield and go like, okay, well now let's do a 2-hour argument on whether or not they understand the labor theory of value, which they don't, and by the way, I probably don't either. So it's just not worth my time. It's not an ideal use of time. Vaush, that all sounds pretty base, but it doesn't sound very socialist. Nothing that I said has anything to do with socialism, really. Socialism just means a democratized and decommodified economy. Even a decommodified economy can use coercion and incentives to get people to work. Socialism, you meet those two criteria, you then try to tune down the coercion as much as possible while maintaining a high degree of productive efficiency. And you still do want, like, to an extent, overproduction. If you don't overproduce, you end up with the supply chain issues because nobody cared to keep overstock. Well, yeah, oftentimes the only way stuff gets cheaper is because people produce so much of a thing that it ends up decreasing the price of other things that use that thing to be made. So, like, things get cheaper the more you produce of them. That's a basic reality of economics, or at least you're proportional to the amount of energy and time invested in the production of something. It goes down relative the more there is. And the more of a thing you produce, it gets cheaper to make other stuff that uses that thing. And this is a lot of the reason why we have such a high standard today when it comes to our ability to just have things. People used to have two outfits. Like, we have come a long way, and there have been sacrifices made, and there have been inefficiencies, but there is something here worth preserving. The incredible efficiency of our modern economy. It's not something we should just throw away. We should look at it, and we should try to understand, how do we take the good parts of this and use them and replicate and build on them, without keeping all of the bad stuff, the inequality, the coercion. And that is a slow and incremental process.